Good morning, everyone. How are you all? I hope you're all safe at home. Coming to your textbook or to your lesson, the lesson we had been doing for the last 2 days. Now we are on page 52, and yesterday we were reading about Anne Frank's first diary entry. Anne started writing in her diary for the first time on 20th June 1942. In her first diary entry, she talks about her class. She tells us how her classmates were on the edge on that particular day. And what was the reason? On the edge means they were nervous. The reason for their nervousness was the teachers were going to meet and they were going to decide who will go to the next term or the next form. So they were all laying bets. The classmates were laying bets that, oh, this person is going to go to the next form, he won't go, all these things. They were doing all these things. As far as Anne was concerned, she felt that a quarter of her classmates didn't deserve to go to the next term, next form, as they were all dummies. That is, they were all dumb. But then she says you cannot predict anything because, according to her, the teachers were the most unpredictable creatures on earth. Then she tells about herself, that is, she is not worried, that she is sure that she and her girlfriends, they will all go to the next form. And then she talks about her teachers. She tells about her relationship with all the teachers. She says that she had a very good relationship with all her teachers. And there were around 9 teachers. 7 were men and 2 were women. Then she talks about her relationship with a maths teacher. That is, her maths teacher, Mr. Keesing, seemed to be annoyed with Anne for a long time. The reason for his annoyance was her talkative nature. According to him, she was a chatterbox. A chatterbox is a very talkative person. So he kept on warning her, and finally he couldn't take it anymore, and he assigned a punishment to her to write an essay on the topic a chatterbox. So when Mr. Keesing gave her that assignment, she notes it down in a notebook and tucked it in a bag and went and forgot about it. And this is where we had stopped, and this is the last paragraph on page number 52 from where we will start reading again. That evening, after I had finished the rest of my homework, the note about the essay caught my eye. So Anne is saying, here I is Anne. That evening, after she had finished the rest of her homework, the note about the essay, that is, she had written that note in her notebook, it caught her eye, that is, it caught her attention. I began thinking about the subject while chewing the tip of my fountain pen. What is a fountain pen? Nowadays, we don't use a fountain pen, but in earlier times, the children used a pen which was filled with liquid ink that was known as a fountain pen. So she had the tip of the fountain pen in her mouth and she was chewing it. Anyone could ramble on and leave big spaces between the words. So she is thinking that anyone could ramble on, that is, anyone could write about it or talk about the topic, and they could leave big spaces between the words so that they could make many pages of the essay. But the trick was to come up with a convincing argument to prove the necessity of talking. But she says the trick was to bring up a convincing argument, that is, to bring up a solid argument, a very good argument, why children need to talk, why students need to talk. I thought, and suddenly I had an idea. So Anne kept on thinking, and finally she got an idea. I wrote the 3 pages Mr. Keesing had assigned me and was satisfied. So finally, she sat down to write, and she was able to write 3 pages of the essay which Mr. Keesing had given, and she says that she was satisfied. I argued that talking is a student's trait and that I would do my best to keep it under control. So she puts up in her argument that talking is a student's trait, that is, talking is a student's characteristics. You cannot separate talking from student. They need to talk. But then she tries to assure Mr. Keesing that I will try to keep it in control, that I won't talk much. But that I would never be able to cure myself of the habit since my mother talked so much as I did, if not more, and that there's not much you can do about inherited traits. So she assures Mr. Keesing that she will try to not to talk much, but she says that I won't be able to cure myself of this habit. That is, I won't be able to stop myself from this habit, as her mother also used to talk too much, and Anne says that her mother also used to talk too much, if not more than her. She used to talk as much as Anne, and then says that you cannot do anything about inherited trait. Inherited traits is something which you get from your parents, the qualities which you get from your parents. So she says that you cannot do much about inherited traits. Mr. Keesing had a good laugh at my arguments, but when I proceeded to talk my way through the next lesson, he assigned me a second essay. So Mr. Keesing, on reading her essay, had a good laugh. That is, he laughed very loudly or full-heartedly at her arguments. And when Anne proceeded, that is, when Anne proceeded, moved to talk my way through, that is, she started talking in a very charming manner so that Mr. Keesing allows her to talk in the class. He didn't do so. He assigned her a second essay. He gave her a second essay to write. This time it was supposed to be an incorrigible chatterbox. The topic of the essay this time was an incorrigible chatterbox. That is, a chatterbox, a talkative person who cannot be corrected. Incorrigible means someone who cannot be corrected. I handed it in, and Mr. Keesing had nothing to complain about for 2 whole lessons. So I handed it in means she wrote the essay and gave it to Mr. Keesing. And Mr. Keesing, after reading the essay, he didn't have anything to complain about for 2 whole lessons. However, during the 3rd lesson, he had finally had enough. But during the 3rd lesson, as Anne continued talking, he had enough. He couldn't tolerate it anymore. Anne Frank, as punishment for talking in class, write an essay entitled Quack, 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 said Mistress Chatterbox. So he said, Anne Frank, now as punishment for talking, the topic for your essay is Quack, 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 Mistress Chatterbox. Quack, quack is the sound which a duck makes. The class roared. I had to laugh too. The class roared. Here, roar is not the roaring which a lion does. Here, roar is for laughter. So the class laughed out loud, and Anne says that she had to laugh too, though I had clearly exhausted my ingenuity on the topic of chatterboxes. She says that I also laughed, although I had exhausted, that is, I had finished all my ideas about the topic chatterboxes, that is, my original ideas. It was time to come up with something else. So she's saying now, this time I'll have to write, or I'll have to come up with some new ideas, something original, and they have to be original. My friend Sana, who's good at poetry, offered to help me write essay from beginning to end in verse. So she had a friend named Sana who was good at poetry, that is, she was good in poem writing. She offered to help Anne, and she told her that she will help her write the essay from beginning to end in verse, that is, in the form of poetry. And I jumped for joy. Jump for joy is a phrase, it means that very happy. So Anne was very happy when Sana offered her to help her. Keesing was trying to play a joke on me with this ridiculous subject, but I'd make sure the joke was on him. So Anne thought that Mr. Keesing was trying to play a joke with Anne by giving her this ridiculous, this funny subject. So she said that I'll make sure that the joke is on him. That is, I don't end up as a joke, but I will make sure that the joke is on him. I finished my poem, and it was beautiful. It was about a mother duck and a father swan with 3 baby ducklings who were bitten to death by the father because they quacked too much. So she says she finished the poem and she found it very beautiful. The poem was about a mother duck and a father swan. Swan is a big bird with an elegant neck. So they had three baby ducklings, and the father swan he bit the baby ducklings to death. That is, he killed the baby ducklings because they quacked too much. They made a lot of noise. Luckily, Mr. Keesing took the joke the right way. That is, she's saying she was lucky. Mr. Keesing uh, didn't find it offending. He took the joke in the right way. He read the he read the poem to the class, adding his own comments. So he read the poem after reading it himself. He read the poem to the class, and in between he gave his own comments, and to several other classes as well. So he enjoyed that poem, and he read it to other classes as well. Since then, I have been allowed to talk and haven't been assigned any extra homework. So she's saying, and after that, she was allowed to talk in the class. That was the last time when Mr. Keesing must have told her not to talk, but after that, she was allowed to talk and she was never assigned extra homework. On the contrary, Mr. Keesing's always making jokes these days. And she's saying, on the contrary, contrary is something opposite of what was expected. That is, till now, Mr. Keesing was asking Anne to be quiet, but now Mr. Keesing had also started making jokes these days. So she ends her diary here and she signs off as yours, Anne. Extracted from the diary of a young girl with slight adaptation. Extracted, that is, this part has been taken from the diary of a young girl, from the book, The Diary of a Young Girl, with slight adaptation, that is, with slight changes. Now we'll do the oral comprehension check. Why was Mr. Keesing annoyed with Anne? What did he ask her to do? Why was Mr. Keesing annoyed with Anne? He was annoyed with Anne for her talkative nature. She used to keep on talking in the class. And what did he ask her to do? He asked her to write an essay on the topic, a chatterbox. How did Anne justify her being a chatterbox in her essay? Anne justified her being a chatterbox by saying that her mother was equally talkative and talking was an inherited trait which she had got from her mother. Do you think Mr. Keesing was a strict teacher? Yes, I think Mr. Keesing was a strict teacher. He didn't like any disturbance in the class when he was teaching. What made Mr. Keesing allow Anne to talk in the class? It was her poem, the last one which he had given, or the last assignment which Mr. Keesing had given, that is, quack, 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 said Mrs. Chatterbox, which she had written in the form of verse, which Mr. Keesing liked very much, and from then on, he allowed her to talk. So this ends the chapter from the diary of Anne Frank. That's all. Thank you.